Hi, Olu.
Hi, Liz.
Tell me how you're feeling about the upcoming election.
Well, I talked to some voters from Pennsylvania yesterday, and let me tell you, I need somebody to talk me off the ledge. I need some therapy. It is
Oh, no.
bleak out there.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Liberal Banter with Liz and Olu. This week, we're talking about the election. Surprise. Surprise.
I mean, who could have guessed?
Right. It's not like it's, 3 weeks away? 21 days?
20 days away.
Oh my God. I can't believe we're almost here. It's crazy. But
my heart is literally in my throat. I can't deal with the anxiety. I am stressed.
Well, there's a reason you're stressed, and it's because of what you said. You talked to some real American voters yesterday. How did that go?
Okay, well, so I've been phone banking for the Democrats in Pennsylvania. As we know, amongst the 7 swing states, Pennsylvania is the most important swing state. And it's essentially cold calling. You just call people. There's a voter log roll. It's automated. You don't really know anything about the person you're calling apart from their first name. First of all, people are pissed because I guess they're tired of both sides calling them.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a fun time to be a Pennsylvania voter, I can imagine.
I know.
They're so fed up over there.
I feel so bad for them. They must be inundated every day from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
But, despite all of that, there was a lot of ignorant there was still a lot of low information. A lot of people who didn't really know. Yeah, because I just don't want to call people ignorant.
Don't say ignorant. It's low information.
People just didn't have the information at their tips, like people who didn't know when the deadline was in Pennsylvania to register.
Wow.
Pro tip, it's October 21st, so you have 5 more days as of today that we're recording if you still need to register. Some folks didn't know that Bob Casey is the senator in Pennsylvania who's running for re-election. So that was, nice to remind some people. But otherwise, most people just hung up on me.
Nice. I mean, I'm going to be honest. When I heard you were phone banking, I was like, man, you are going to talk to some old people, aren't you? Because, I know I don't pick up my phone if I don't recognize the number. But I think it's interesting because the last few days, you and I have both heard from real voters. You heard from real voters by calling them. I heard from real voters by spending some time on political TikTok, specifically political debate TikTok. And I feel like there's going to be some overlap between the stuff you heard and the stuff I heard from people who are maybe not so enthused about Kamala Harris. There's some familiar excuses just seem to start cropping up the more time you spend talking to, quote, real voters outside of the internet.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there were people who were just entirely pro-Trump, and there's no need to bother trying to convince them. If they're strongly Trump or Republican, you just move on. The training is that you just move on. You don't have to, keep them on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
The undecideds, there's a major gender gap. Oh my God. The undecideds were mostly male, and the men of color, I'm sorry.
It's a deep sigh that you just did.
Yeah.
The
men of color I spoke to were not enthused at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that because obviously, like you said, Pennsylvania is a very important state. And it kind of dovetails nicely with the conversation that's been happening the last couple of days as well, which is Kamala Harris losing ground with Black voters, specifically Black men? So to hear that your calls also kind of, I mean, obviously it's a small sample size, right? It's not, you didn't talk to every Black man who's voting in Pennsylvania, but it seems like that concern may not just be manufactured in the polls. I don't know how much credence we should give to this because it is still polling. You know, they only talk to about 600, 700 people when they do these polls. But it seems like there is some evidence that there should be some concern, just based on your conversation.
Yes, and I don't know if you're going to be glad to be winning this part or not, but apparently you were right. Because as you know, I've thought that this, Black voter panic is a little bit of a overblown, a bit of slander against particularly Black men.
It could still be. There's still time to change it, guys. Yeah. Men. There's still time to turn all this around. Okay. But I am concerned.
Okay, but I do have to say, in general, it was just nearly all of the men I spoke to were not interested and not enthused in Kamala Harris. And that included Hispanic men, that included men with Middle Eastern backgrounds, and also white men. I mean, the white men were just Trump voters, and you just told me I'm Republican, fuck off. That kind of thing.
That was nice of them to not waste your time, at least.
I know.
So,
I honestly heard the most boomer thing I have ever heard in my life last night, which
what did you hear?
This lady who was like, I'm hateful, I'm bitter, and I could not care less. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Okay, lady. Okay, ma'am. Okay. Listen, I kind of respect that. I kind of respect that. Good for her. She's like, listen, I don't have that much time left on this earth. I will not spend it discussing the election on the phone. Good for you, ma'am, and I hope you're registered to vote. Yes. But to the point though about voters of color, and I really want to say about Black men, I also saw the same, or heard, let's say, I didn't see, I also heard the same thing on TikTok over the weekend. So unlike Olu, who is doing the Lord's work, got out of her house, did some outreach, I tried to do some outreach on TikTok. And what I did was using our Liberal Banter podcast account, which you can follow on TikTok if the spirit moves you and that's a place where you hang out. We are there, even though we don't post a lot. We interact a lot on the lives. I joined quite a few lives over the TikTok lives over the weekend and the last couple of days, where people who either are for or against the Democrats or Republicans come together in these basically panels to debate each other. And like you, Olu, I was surprised as well at the number of Black people, especially Black men, who seem to be voting for Trump. Now, obviously, it's TikTok. We don't know if these people were just trolling and just felt like, causing some tension on a panel on a TikTok, but it was surprising. And then to follow that up with the New York Times polling, I was also concerned. And I think we have said on this podcast before that Black people still overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. I don't think that's going to change in this election. But I think there is now beginning to surface evidence, and polling, and anecdotally from my perspective, is showing that there might be an issue for the Democrats. I don't know if it's a Kamala Harris issue, but it's definitely a Democrat issue with Black male voters. And I don't know how to feel about that, because although I think, and you have said this before to your point, they're still going to overwhelmingly vote for the Democrats, probably more than any other demographic, correct? I think it's like 82%.
Not probably, definitely more than any other demographic.
Right. No other group in America votes for Democrats on the scale of Black people in general. And so it's hard to feel like you should make any kind of complaint about that. But on the other hand, it is disturbing to see that some percentage of Black men, that's more than 5%, seems to think Donald Trump is the answer. It's a little scary. It's a little confusing.
Yes, but I have so many complicated feelings about this, because I understand why I guess there's a panic in Democratic circles about Black voters and Black men. But this feels like, again, Black people having to be twice as good and twice as hardworking as other people. Because, I mean, we're talking about a coalition. And if your coalition needs 90-something% of Black people to vote for you, it's not much of a coalition, is it? Right? Like, why do we actually need that much Black people to vote for Democrats? That's because white people don't vote for Democrats, right? Like, let's be real, right? Because
not in the same numbers, not in the same numbers.
Exactly. All Democrats need to do is shift maybe 1 to 2% of white voters, and they wouldn't even need Black voters to be voting in those numbers at all, right? Because like the overwhelming share of voters in general is still white people, right? But because we're still doing things like 46% with white women, 42% with white men, that's why we need Black folks to be voting in 92%, 94%, 96% numbers. And that's the problem. As far as Hispanic folk and brown folk and Black people are concerned, most of this time they vote for their interests. They vote for the person who cares about their identity. They vote for the person who's going to protect their rights. And then we see a lot of white women not doing that. Why?
Well, I think, so there's two things to what you said there towards the end. The point about people of color voting their interests, I don't know if that is what is happening. Based on the conversations I was participating in and heard, it seems like, just like you were saying with your calls, there's some low information voters out there. And some of them are voting in what they think is their interest, but is not. There's a lot of misinformation, and people don't seem to understand how the government works, how the economy works, how immigration works, based on the reasonings I've heard. So one thing, and we can just talk about some of the stuff. I'll talk about some of the stuff I heard on TikTok, and you let me know if it sounds familiar based on your conversations. So one thing I heard quite a bit is that immigrants and migrants are coming into the U.S. and taking jobs and resources away from Black communities. And that's one of the reasons why people don't want to vote for the Democrats and vote for Kamala Harris. Does that ring familiar to you based on your calls?
Yes, there are people who spoke about their multiple jobs and how they're not able to make ends meet, and some undeserving people are being given federal aid. So they mean the immigrants who are, getting some kind of housing and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. That's a big thing that I heard. Is that true, though? That is not true. That's not true.
That is not true. But this is the problem, right? The GOP relies on otherizing folks and telling people, these people are less deserving than you. And they've done that successfully with working class America. They've done that successfully with rural America. And now they're telling brown and Black folk the same thing. And to my disappointment, those folks are falling for it. Like, it used to be that they would talk to working class rural white folk and tell them, like, Black and brown people are your enemies. And now they've essentially repackaged that message to Black and brown folk and now telling them that immigrants are the ones coming for your jobs. And this is insane.
Yeah, it is working. It is working. And that's sort of the, quote, immigrant argument that people are making, is that immigrants are taking jobs, they're taking resources. That's one thing I heard Black people say. The other thing I heard Black people say a lot on TikTok, Black people who support Trump, let's be clear, say on TikTok was the economy. The price of eggs has gone up. The price of milk has gone up. Groceries are more expensive. They weren't as expensive under Trump. This is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's fault. I don't want to vote for Democrats. Trump is going to bring prices down. Zero context for how that's going to happen. And if you ask them, who sets grocery prices? Who sets the gas price? does the president like text the CEO of Exxon and say, hey, bro, can you make gas $5 a gallon today? That's not how America works, right? This is capitalism. We allow companies to set prices they want. They decide what that price is. And supposedly the free market is supposed to work where if the price is too high, nobody buys anything and then the price comes down. We all know that's not what happens. But that fundamental misunderstanding of how the economy works, you know, saying things were better under Donald Trump. Yes, that was 5 years ago. Prices have gone up since then. No matter who's in the White House, that's not changing. That's not something that's Kamala Harris's fault, but she's getting blamed for that because she's with Joe Biden. And so now people are saying we can't vote for Democrats. Trump is going to bring prices down. How? I don't know. Maybe Trump will bully all the CEOs and executives to lower the prices of things. We'll see if that works. But I don't think so.
But this is the thing. At this point, I feel like the groceries stuff and the gas prices stuff, this is the economic anxiety of 2024. Like, this is what it's reminiscent of the economic anxiety nonsense from 2016. Because honestly, we're all living in the same economy, right? Like, let's be real. Most lower income families actually vote Democratic, right? Like, apparently 6 out of 10 voters with an income of less than $35,900 vote Democratic, right? So there is no like special sort of get out of jail pass for voting for Democrats on your grocery bill, right? Like, we're all paying the same grocery bills and we're all living through the same inflationary times. So in my mind, that is not enough to explain why people are choosing to vote for Trump. Because if you listen to Trump's economic plan, as you've mentioned several times, it's actually more inflationary, right? Economists have said that this is actually going to decimate the country. This is actually what he's doing is what is most likely to directly affect groceries. As you've pointed out, the president does not set grocery prices unless the president decides to put a 20% tax on your Pepsi. And now it is going to be 20% more expensive when you go buy it. That's like literally what he's doing. He's putting his thumb on the scales of grocery prices, right? So I just don't get it. I don't think the groceries are enough. I think, again, what is so dangerous about Trump is that he's able to mess with people's psyches and he's able to tell them, look, hate these other people. They are the ones causing the problems. And that is really what I think is driving the vote for him.
I think the economic message is also part of it. He says a lot of very simple statements that are not backed with any fact or evidence. I'm going to lower prices. How? We're going to drill, baby, drill. Okay. What's, sure, that might reduce the price of gasoline, but that's not going to reduce the grocery prices enough to make any kind of difference. For people who don't know, I'm pretty sure, and I've done this research, transportation costs are only about 1% of your grocery bill. So if you think that making the oil prices lower so the trucking companies can get you your, frozen pizza earlier, that's not the solution. All you're doing is helping the trucking companies. That's not going to bring the grocery prices down. So he does a lot of things like that I think also work. I think the othering message works. And I also think keeping it simple, making things sound completely straightforward and simple when they are anything but, makes people think he has a plan. He's going to do what he says. It's like, Mexico is going to pay for the wall. That didn't happen. But people forget, apparently.
But then that's just voting for a slogan. That's not voting for a policy. That's
it's definitely
just voting for a slogan.
Agreed. It's a lot of vibes. That's what I mean by low information. And again, this is what I saw on TikTok. There is a lot of low information voting going on this election. People just hear something, they think it sounds good, and that's their guy because it aligns with how they view the world. It doesn't matter if it's based in reality or not. And that's why when you're saying you had these calls and you're sort of feeling down, I felt that way as well. I think when we are in our, algorithm driven world of like Threads or TikTok or Reddit, and everyone kind of agrees with you and feels the same way and says, obviously Trump is delusional, obviously he's suffering from dementia, all these things. We all know, when you're online, you're in a bubble of sorts. This past few days, taking time to step out of that bubble, like deliberately putting ourselves in a space where we were not talking to people who agree with us, I think it was a little eye-opening for me. And also, like you, I also left concerned. I was also very concerned.
I don't know the way forward to this. I just hope that Trump doesn't win. And I'm also hoping that means that this spell will be broken.
I hope so as well.
Of just otherizing people and making them the reason for your problems. I just hope that breaks at some.
I agree, because I think we should be very worried if it doesn't, like longer term. But I think if he loses, it will break for most people. There's always going to be that fringe, right?
Well, obviously there's going to be that fringe, but it is a little bit jarring to see just the sheer number of people who are just more than happy to cheer when Trump says things like, let's just have 1 hour of violence, 1 day of violence, to take care of, crimes. Let the police do whatever they want. And it's just so jarring because it's literally they're imagining all the black criminals and the brown criminals that's going to be rounded up in this. That racism just shakes me to my bone.
Yeah, and can I say though, even in the conversations I observed, even when you point out Trump is racist, nobody who supports him cares. They don't care about that. They hear you. They kind of see your point sometimes that he says things, but their rationalizing of that is that he doesn't mean it. He's just talking. It's just campaign talk, which is concerning because, like, when did that become campaign talk, right? But that's what they say. They say he doesn't mean it. I think the title of this episode should be "We talked to and we heard from real voters, and we are not okay after that experience." We're not okay because this episode feels so down. It's like, oh my God. But back to the point I was making. The reason I say people who support him or say they're independent and are still considering him for some reason dismiss what he says. Take Roe v. Wade and the abortion discussion. They think the solution is that he's going to leave it to the states. They think he's going to leave it to the states. States can decide what they want. Trump is going to be hands off on this. You and I don't believe that. Most people who are Democrats don't believe that. But the people who are, quote, in the middle, independent, and who are also right for Trump, voting for Trump, they think he's just talking. They think things like, one of them said, plainly said, we have checks and balances. He can't do half the stuff in Project 2025 because we have, the legislative and the judicial branch to protect us from a president gone wild. And I'm thinking to myself, are you aware of today's Supreme Court? Do you know what happens if Trump wins? If Trump wins, the Republicans probably won the Senate and the House. So where is the check and balance coming from? These are things they tell themselves to rationalize away all those concerns you have about the racism and the misogyny and the nationalism. They just say it's vibes. He's just talking. It's a campaign speech. He doesn't mean it. He'll be better when he's governing. That's what they tell themselves. That was my observation. And I just found it stunning because we have 4 years of evidence to show it's not all talk. We're literally living in post-Roe America because of him. And that's a promise he ran on and actually delivered. So I'm not sure where they're getting all this hope that he's just talking and he doesn't mean it.
I was going to say just exactly that. This guy asked his military chiefs, can you not just shoot protesters in the street? He does mean it. He does mean what he is saying. It's not a joke. It's not vibes. And this is the problem. I think there's a major divide about between people who just find Trump funny and they just think, oh, he's good for a laugh, while the rest of us are like, oh my God, this is literally him drawing up his plans for a dystopia. Let's be real, people.
Yeah. I think we'll have to just see how it goes, I saw a couple articles about Democrats being concerned about places like Pennsylvania. I understand where it's coming from now. And if you're reading that news and thinking to yourself, nah, she has this, she killed him in the debate, sure. But if you live in a swing state, this is by no means going to be some sort of wipeout for Trump. It's going to be super, super, super close. Super close. And I cannot stress enough how much we absolutely need every single person who can vote to vote. I don't even know if I felt this strongly about it in 2016, being completely honest, but this time really, 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 really feels like it needs to be all hands on deck, because these people are not joking. The people who are voting for Trump or who say they're independent but are probably going to vote for Trump, they are out there. They are not a made up, figment of the imagination of the New York Times or Washington Post. These people are real. We should take some of this polling seriously as warning signs. And the good news is we still have 3 weeks to reverse it. So let's try and do that, okay?
Honestly, I was speaking to somebody who was sounding like my uncle on the phone, and I'm like, you know what? You've already done your part. It's fine.
No, I'm with Obama, okay? I'm with Obama on this. I don't care if it sounds like chastising. You know who he's talking to, okay? If you are one of those people who's like, I'm voting for Kamala Harris, this is not about you, okay? It's not about you. But please, 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 those of you who are out there, I'm not on Olu's side. We all need to get it together, okay? I'm not going to be like, oh, it's, let's let the black men do what they want. No, okay? Please vote Democrat. Thank you.
Well, obviously, I'm not saying we can just I'm not saying they can just do what they want, but I'm just saying, I just don't agree with this, scapegoating, right? If we are saying we have a coalition, then the rest of the coalition is to show up. Where is the rest of y'all? I'm sorry.
Okay, fine.
Where are you guys? Why do people of color have to carry the Democratic Party on their back? Why?
It's because that's just the way it is. Oh, look. There's no good answer, okay? There is no good answer. Kamala Harris tried. She did her best. She picked the most Midwestern grandpa she could find for vice president, She's doing her part. She's walking around with Glocks in her glove compartment. She's trying to do the outreach. Just trying to do the outreach. But can those of us on her team already, can we stay on the team, please? Please, this is not the time to start adventuring with other options. And don't even get me started on the third-party voters, because those ones are just, gosh.
Well, speaking of outreach to black voters and, the last stretch, the last push that Democrats are making, I know you wanted to talk about some of the things she's been doing in terms of the policies that she released this week, and also going on some podcasts and talking to black audiences.
She talked to Charlemagne. I honestly didn't listen to it. I was working, so I couldn't hear all of it. It's what happens when you're on the West Coast. They say stuff is at 5 p.m. Eastern, and it's no, that's still 2, and I'm still working. So I didn't listen to everything she said, but she did release her plan for black men. Her opportunity agenda for black men, which I'm going to be honest, I don't love it. Granted, I'm not the audience, so maybe that's why. but I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I got to be honest. And I'm going to read. It's 5 bullet points. Basically, and my assumption is that this is on top of her actual economic plan. So let's not assume this is the only thing she's going to do. But these are 5 things she said are geared specifically towards black men. First was provide $1 million loans fully forgivable up to $20K for Black entrepreneurs. The second is support education, training, and mentorship programs. Third is protecting cryptocurrency, which, girl, really? And then fourth was launch a national health initiative. And last, number 5, legalize recreational marijuana. You know, it's a list. It's a list. It's a list.
You know, I'm not mad at the list about providing loans for entrepreneurs and the list about improving health outcomes for Black men and also improving the presence of Black men in education and in our schools. Those, I think, are completely relevant and valid for the Black community.
Those were not the ones I was like side-eyeing.
Like, this is not 2009. Like, nobody cares about legalizing marijuana anymore.
Whoa. Lots of people care. Hold on.
Okay.
A lot of people care.
Everyone and their mothers is using marijuana these days in some form, right? It's in the oils, it's in the candy, it's everywhere. I mean, you can't even go outside anymore without smelling marijuana, right? So, like,
okay. Oh, I don't.
How is this specific to Black people? I don't get it.
I mean,
this is not a Black issue.
Sure. I mean, my concern with that point was more about when she said legalizing recreational marijuana and creating opportunities for Black Americans to succeed in this industry. I thought to myself, legalizing marijuana today on a federal level is something a lot of people care about. I don't know if it's like their reason for voting, but they do care about it. So I'm going to disagree with you on that there. No matter how prevalent it gets, it's not federally legal. And so those of us who live in, coastal states are fine, but not everyone is. My concern with this was like, if we legalize this today, a lot of the marijuana companies are run by white people. So that's who would benefit immediately. Obviously, if you were being arrested for something, this would be in your favor. But from a corporate business perspective, it would be the white owners of marijuana companies that would benefit. So that was my thing, was like, what's the plan for this to actually increase equity in that industry so that when it is legalized, it benefits everyone? That was my concern. And then the crypto thing, I refuse. I don't think that's something we should be getting into as a presidential candidate. I'm so sorry. We're not Eric Adams. Okay, let's not start diving into this. But I guess if that's what people care about, maybe that's why it's there.
This is the kind of policy that appeals to the people who are extremely online and already like self-promoting and, I don't know, already into crypto. Like, whether we like it or not, there is an extremely loud, extremely overrepresented like tech base that is all about the crypto, all about the AI. The average American, most Americans are just not there, right? But it's overrepresented in our culture and our society because those people tend to also be very media savvy. I just don't see how this affects most Black people.
Yeah, and Black men specifically, right? Because that's one of the things. To get into crypto, being completely honest, you need disposable income because it's basically gambling. It's like it's not a real investing, so, at least for most of it. So are Black people the group that will have that level of income, like on a large scale, to do that? Unfortunately, due to inequality in the system, that's not currently the case. So again, it's like, who is this really helping? I don't know. But she's trying, right? She is trying. So there's that. At least her plan has things going for it versus just vibes like a Trump plan.
I appreciate why she is trying. Unfortunately for us, we live in the dumbest era and the dumbest timeline, wherein people like Joe Rogan and Charlamagne tha God are the leading thought leaders amongst men for some reason that is completely baffling to me. So
okay, I'm going to disagree with you on Charlamagne. I think he has some interesting takes and thoughts, so I don't hate him as much as you.
Okay. But these are the people that created the gender divide that we actually are living in right now, right? Like, these are the people who have the content and the guests who come on and sow misogyny, homophobia, transphobia into our discourse, right? Like, I feel like we're rewarding the people who created the toxic conversation environment that we are in right now. And we're rewarding them with even more status and even more influence by elevating them to this level where a presidential candidate has to, and I understand why she has to go and talk to some steroid muscle head like Joe Rogan. Allegedly, she's planning to do that.
Allegedly.
Right? Like, it's just, it's baffling to me. Like, say, you may say whatever you want about Charlamagne tha God, but you cannot deny that over the last 4 years, he's been part of the what is the Biden administration doing for Black people chorus. And he's just been extremely wrong, right? The truth is that HBCUs have seen record funding under the Biden-Harris administration. The truth is that Kamala has been working on maternal health for Black women. The truth is that in 2022, they were still announcing funding for small Black businesses, minority-owned. The truth is that the USDA announced debt relief for Black farmers in 2022 and 2023. I feel like these chaos agents, they create the problem and then present themselves as a solution to the problem. Because now Charlamagne tha God gets to position himself as somebody who, brought Black economic woes to light. But that is not true. The Biden-Harris administration has actually been working on this for the past 3.5 years, if you were paying attention.
Well, I mean, but he said this before the 2020 election, right? Like, that's part of how Charlamagne became part of the political discussion, is him holding a mic up to people like Joe Biden when they were running in 2020. Hosting, I think Kamala went on his show when she was still trying to win the Democratic nomination. So I wouldn't say he only started caring about this or trying to become a leader in the party in the last 3 years. Like, Charlamagne has been involved in this stuff before. On the Joe Rogan aspect, I will take umbrage, let's say, to putting Charlamagne and Joe Rogan in the same sentence. I really think they are not the same. Joe Rogan will, with seriousness, have someone on his podcast for 4 hours who thinks the earth is flat and will, nod along and say, you have very good points. That's not something Charlamagne would do. So I feel like we need to separate the two, first of all. Second, if she goes on Joe Rogan, it's because that's where the people are, right? I feel like your issue is more with society elevating people as opposed to people elevating themselves. Joe Rogan has been one of America's most popular podcasters for years. If that's where she needs to go to reach people instead of Meet the Press, which nobody watches, that's what she's going to do. And we can talk about society elevating Joe Rogan another time, and we should. But I think that's why she goes on these podcasters and these shows, is because that's what people listen to. And that's what she has to do to get her message across, because Trump is already doing that. He is already talking to these people in these spaces. And that's why we're hearing so much misinformation online or on the phone when we talk to people.
I agree. I understand why she's there, and, more power to her going to Joe Rogan. As I said, we only need 1 or 2% more white men than the last time, and we can totally win this election. So I get it. Good for her. Go on there. But I also feel like it is worth noting that these people are the kind of people who created the kind of environment that we live in. I'm sorry, the Breakfast Club is trash. Always panders to the lowest common denominator.
My gosh. Hold on. I enjoy the Breakfast Club sometimes. Whoa. They have cool people on there. It's not just pop culture news and jokes. They have interesting people. You know what? We'll have it be homework for this episode. You're going to have to listen to the Breakfast Club lately. I don't know the last time you listened to it, but they have interesting people on there.
Okay. Well, that has not been my experience. I have to say, I do not always listen to them, but I have heard some of the problematic stuff.
Okay.
Like
yes.
some of the stuff about, and I hate to bring a minor into this, but some of the stuff about a popular basketball player's daughter, just because she's trans, like some of the stuff they've allowed their guests to say on there, like it's a problem, and I don't think that we should pretend that this is not a problem.
So are you talking about Dwayne? Are you talking about Dwayne Wade's daughter that's trans? Is that the basketball player you're talking about?
Exactly. I'm talking about her, and I didn't really want to bring her up because she's a minor, and I don't understand why adults feel the need to comment on a minor's life in this way and dissect their pronouns in this way. Like, shut the fuck up and mind your business. My sense of what the Breakfast Club is like is that I'm sure they have, very, very good points sometimes. But the stuff that tends to go viral that breaks, to me, a person who doesn't listen to them, is usually homophobic, transphobia, or misogyny in some way. Like, I'm sorry, I don't really have the time to go into everything right now.
Totally,
but the transgender
understand.
Stuff comes to my mind right away.
Okay, but was that Charlamagne saying that, or was that a guest on the show saying that?
Okay, but Liz, you just put Joe Rogan to task for bringing somebody on
because he agrees
the Earth is flat.
Yes, and he'll go on there and agree. I just want to. Let's not. Okay, let's do this. We'll agree to disagree for now. I'm just gonna say, I think I know the incident you're talking about. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Charlamagne that was participating in that. It was the guest on the show. And that person apologized later. But totally understand. We don't want to sidetrack the podcast with this. I just want to put that out there. I don't think the hosts of the show were participating in what you're talking about.
Yes, that is one episode, and we didn't plan to talk about this today, so I'm not really prepared with the receipts.
That's fine.
But I feel every time these folks have broken to my consciousness, they have either been platforming or entertaining some really, really ignorant bullshit. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And
that's
it's
fine.
not enough, but this is the thing, this is something we also keep bringing up. It's not enough to say that, oh, well, I didn't say it. It's also important not to platform the people who are going to say that. I'm sorry. And if we can see that with Fox News, I don't see why we can't see that with, black media as well. Some of the stuff black media puts out is really, really ignorant.
Yes, and we should totally talk about that at a later point. But I didn't mean to get you all riled up trying to defend Charlamagne. I just think if we're talking about black people, black men voting in this election, I think it helps for Kamala to do things like Joe Rogan, which black people do listen to, and Charlamagne, because maybe she can cut through the misinformation we're talking about. Maybe she can help explain to people how the economy works. It's just, again, to the earlier point, the reasons people are giving. If Democrats are going to see a reduction in black voters from 80% to 75%, which is 5% drop, if that's going to happen, it should happen for logical reasons. It should happen because people understand what's happening and truly, truly believe the Republicans are the better choice for them. I don't think that's what's happening right now. I think people are misinformed or low informed and are making the wrong choice. And I think there is still a chance to get people back to logic and reasoning, but we need to share that information with them. And I hope Kamala Harris's campaign has a plan for that, especially in the swing states. I get your point. This is not scapegoating. This is really just calling out people need to be informed. And I think you will see a difference in the polling. I just don't think that's happened yet.
I agree. And I understand that I'm clearly not the audience for this, right? So she's where the people are at. We need more male voters. We need more male voters of color. So more power to her.
I don't know what the plan is for, what your plan is for the election, but I will be watching it between my fingers with my hand over my face. Just scared. That's how I'm going to be watching the results coming in.
there will be wine, copious amounts of wine. And honestly, I think I'm going to be drinking the wine either way, depending on how it goes, either in celebration or to drown my tears. I don't know which one.
I don't think we're going to know the winner that day. I think that is becoming clearer every day, especially with stuff like what's happening in Georgia with the Republican election board. I don't know if we're going to get the winner that day, but hopefully within the couple of days after.
Yeah. Hopefully. There's a lot of more. I don't know if you saw this news. There was more early voting, record breaking in Georgia. 300,000 people voted in one day. And
Holy
those
cow.
will probably not be counted until
After.
November 5. So there's going to be a delay. So we may not know the results.
You know exactly what's going to happen, right? You know precisely if even half
what
of
Trump
those
is going to say.
Yes, he's going to say I was ahead, and then all of a sudden these votes came in, meaning these early votes that finally get counted after. Because he doesn't understand how elections work, right? He doesn't understand how you can be leading and then fall behind. So that's going to happen again, isn't it? They're going to say the election was stolen because they finally counted the early votes after election day. And it switched, maybe.
Exactly. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how elections work as well. So to them, it makes sense for him to say, well, up until 11 p.m., I was winning. And then at 12 a.m., they changed it. And it's like, well, no, they just haven't counted.
It's the illegals that voted. Oh, God. Yeah. It's going to be exciting, isn't it?
It is.
No.
It is.
Oh, dear.
All right. That's all from us, folks. If you enjoyed this episode, please do share with your friends. Despite our conversation today, we still encourage everybody to be upbeat and optimistic. Keep working on your friends, your family members, and we will see you the next time. Bye-bye now.